this particular story started 20 years ago when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, which means it's extremely serious. And I had 2 sons aged 8 and 5. And when I tell the story, I forget to mention that I also had a husband, and you can imagine the stress that he was under. So I had to have treatment. I don't know whether I'd go the same route now, but when you are diagnosed unexpectedly, and you've got all these responsibilities, and you need to live, and you want to live, you actually want to give the responsibility for this disease to someone else. You want someone else to make you better. And that's why you go to the doctor, and the doctor tells you what he's going to do, and you say, yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir. And so for me, that was radical surgery. The stuff was already in my glands, so all the glands were taken from my armpits. And then I had chemotherapy, and the chemotherapy went on for 12 months. And then I had radiation after that. And the idea was that I was in such a bad way that they needed to give me the strongest treatment that I could possibly tolerate in order for me to survive, so that I could raise my children and presumably look after my husband as well. And so I started on this, and I was just thinking last night about telling you a little bit more about the story, because I went in for a biopsy, and I went in for a mammogram, and they found these things, and they put pins into your breast where the end of the pin is stuck into the so-called bad tissue. You're then sent into theatre, and they cut out these pinpricks, if you like, and then they send it to the path labs, and then they come back with the news. And so this happened, and the surgeon waited for my husband to be with me. It was about a lunchtime on a Monday. No, I lied. It was a lunchtime on a Tuesday, and he said, well, I've got bad news. And he told us the story. And he said, we need to do the surgery tomorrow morning, first thing surgery. And I said, just wait a minute. Can I have 24 hours? Because I would really like to go home. I'd like to see my kids. I'd like to make some plans for them. I'd like to tell my mother, whatever. And I'm getting quite emotional, I'm sorry. I don't often think about this, but he said, okay, 24 hours. But the most important thing was the following day, which was Wednesday. My husband and I were attending a luncheon. And it was a wonderful luncheon because it was a wearable art fashion show and luncheon. And I wasn't going to miss that. So we went to that. So we had this lunch, and we were with all these people. And from that, I was driven to the hospital, and they were very furious with me because you meant to arrive at 1 o'clock, and I arrived at 2. And so anyway, so I had all that. I was in the hospital for 10 days. And before I left, I had to have my first chemo. And chemo makes you really sick until they find enough drugs that they can pump into you on a regular basis so that you don't feel so nauseous. You feel nauseous because the body's saying, hey, what are you doing to me? This is poison, don't do this. And they just damp it all down, and eventually it gets settled. And so they are using an absolute sledgehammer to kill the cancer. But what they are also doing is killing a whole lot of normal cells. And I am a scientist, as Noah said, and one of the things I did, because it's the way I am, is that I went to some books, and I started looking at the drugs that they were pumping into me. And the first one I saw was called cisplatin. They give them in what are called cocktails. So it's this mixture of drugs. And I looked at the cisplatin, and I recall that when I was doing research myself in the laboratory with cells, is I personally put cisplatin onto cells to see how well it killed them. And I'd been looking at this under a microscope. I'd been seeing this happening, not to any old cell, but to my white blood cells. What are white blood cells but your immune system? So I thought, oh, yes. This is not good news. I don't need to know that. And so I just basically put a wall around that whole thing, and I said, I've committed to this. The doctor can take charge of that. I'll do what he wants to do there with as little mental attention to that as I could possibly make, and then I would do something else on the side. So what I decided to do was to look at it from my biochemistry background and to realize that what I knew is that the body is in fact an amazingly intricate machine, that it is designed to do the right thing if it is given the right tools. And if I then give it the right tools to deal with this, maybe I'll come through it. I also knew, because I was taught both academically and by my mother, that the right thing to do is to eat the right food and everything will be fine. And I had been quite a good girl, boring, some would say. I've never been drunk in my life. I do like a wine now and again, but I've never been drunk. I've never had a cigarette near my lips, ever. I exercise. I'm not particularly overweight, and so on. And I know what a right balanced diet should be, and I tried to put it on the table for my family, and my mother had tried to do it for me, and I was still in this situation. So what on earth was going on? And it was at that time, and I want to say this to distributors in particular, it was at that time that someone, it was my sister-in-law, came to me and she said, I know some really good products that are food supplements that can fill the dietary gaps, and maybe you want to try them. And, well, I did. And at that point, I didn't know anything about these products at all. But I didn't really care. I just took her word for it, that they were good and that they'd been researched, and that kind of triggers all the right things in my brain, because that's what I used to do. And I decided to take them. And over time, I started looking into them. And I realized that they are in fact good products, that they do in fact do what they claim to do, that the research is impeccable, that they are as up-to-date as products can be, that they come from the natural food chain, there are no other goodies in there, and that in fact what I was doing was making sure that under extreme circumstances I was in fact giving my body the nutrients it needed with no interference with the drugs at all, that could allow it to, I don't know why my voice is shaking like it is, sorry about that. So it would allow my body to do what it was supposed to do against this onslaught of the treatment that I was getting. And, well, the rest is history, obviously. 20 years on, here I am. I don't think I look sick. I certainly don't feel sick. I'm back in the normal population. Should I get cancer again, it will not be the same cancer. It would be a new cancer. And I do not anticipate going. I'm really never been like this before. The other thing I want to say to you is that I believe that had I known before what I know now and what I learned once I was in that horrible situation, I would never have got into that horrible situation. And that is the message I want to give you. This is meant to be preventative. It is not meant to be curative. And I believe I was lucky to survive. People that I know who were in the same situation as I was at the same time, not taking these products because they didn't believe in them, but nonetheless, they were going through the same treatment as I was. They no longer exist. And that is real. Cancer is not cured. And cancer, the medical profession regards as a success if you live a further 5 years. 5 years was not enough for me. My boy would have been 10. It's not enough. So you don't want to go there. You want to prevent it from the start. And the other aspect is that it is extremely expensive, the treatment I'm talking about. It's expensive in monetary value, it's expensive in emotional health, it's expensive in all sorts of ways. And sorry, Nola, I've never done this before.
You're fine.
So, if you are a distributor, go and tell people. You are actually doing them the biggest favor you can possibly do them. Whether they listen to you or not is actually not your problem. It's their problem that they need to know the information so that they can make the choices. If you are a guest, please listen to the person who invited you here. They are sharing absolutely invaluable information with you. And listen and take heed and do something about it. You know, it might not be written in your life that you will get sick. But don't take the risk, because the other thing I've got to tell you is that you've got to beware of serious side effects from taking these things. The side effects are that your joints are good, your eyes are good, your heart is good, your life is good, your kids are healthy if they take it, your household runs kind of on a normal, even keel, the stresses and strains are reduced, your health is as good as it can be, your lifespan as good as your particular lifespan can be. And those are serious side effects that you have to take into consideration. It's really something you have to do. You will win, and the research here is absolutely fundamental to it. And you can believe in these products and go ahead with them. And I'm sorry, I don't know what's happened.
Feel emotional, and it's a great story. Why don't we all stand?